Siobhan, namaste.
Namaste.
One thing good about namaste is it is time neutral. You can say namaste in the morning, namaste in the afternoon, namaste in the evening, namaste for good night, namaste when you receive a friend, namaste when you say see you again. So that's the wonderful thing about namaste. So let me take you through a small presentation that I made, and you'll be surprised that can you see?
Yes, I can.
Siobhan, Siobhan, correct?
Siobhan, that's correct.
Siobhan, correct. See, I guessed your color is blue.
I love blue.
I know that. There we go. So, let me put it on the slideshow. Okay, since it's a curtain raiser, I thought I'll use curtain because I think with colors, I think with PPT. So I feel very comfortable using PPT and all these colors. So here we go. Welcome to Dr. M's podcast. And we talk about that later. But here we go. This is an impromptu interaction with Siobhan McHale, if I'm pronouncing it right.
Yes, McHale.
McHale.
Yes,
Okay.
McHale. Yeah.
I got another French name to pronounce after this, so I'm going to get into all this. But this is just to understand the hive mind, what you have projected. And what is very important to me is in the Indian context, centuries ago, decades ago, when we had this Gurukul system, there was no written script, etc., etc., etc. So, what the Guru, not the Guru that is interpreted by West, the actual Guru, would narrate certain things, and he would say, "Let my students understand the meaning of this as I want them to understand."
Yes, very important.
Because we lose that in translation, and I'm having a massive problem of Japanese translated into English. So I want to understand certain things from you, and that will be shared with the team that Colleen has put up. So here we go. There you are. I don't have to introduce you to you, but this is standard work. I have not read this book, The Insider's Guide to Culture Change, but I would love to. And then this is what we are talking about. So, Siobhan, nice of you. And what I like about it is that you gave us the exclusive this thing for Indian subcontinent. Thank you very much. This is exclusive for Indian subcontinent. So I got it rather cheap. Okay.
Right.
So this is for my more or less reference that your career span, you started somewhere around 1989, as I see it. And ANZ is what created a lot of history, and that case study was studied in Harvard Business Review. Not getting into it because today is just the warming up session. So it's amazing that the efforts and your knowledge. And what I really like about your book, being a researcher myself, is the number of references that you have is unbelievable. I mean, it just shows the depth in which you have gone into the concept. And that's what really got me going. And it took me 6 years to do my doctoral work. Incidentally, that so happened to be in the field of culture. We will not discuss that, right? Okay. So, what are we going to do is we're going to talk about this hive mindset. And so, the first thing that we are a little familiar, but this is for my audience to understand, my viewers to understand the distinction between the intelligent quotient, the emotional quotient, and the group quotient. You have explained in many of your videos and many of the LinkedIn posts uh, the difference between that. I thought I will start with this, that this is the 21st century. Change requires a new sort of intelligence, which is called the group intelligence. This
Sure.
is fairly well understood because you have explained it time and again, and then I think I am probably the fourth or fifth person whom you're talking to. So many of them have heard you. But what I would request you to do is to interject this with this. That is, you know, correlate this for me, where you have said the change model. Can you talk to us about this, the change model and this one
Sure.
here?
Yeah, so there is a need to move from this machine mindset where we think we can fix problems with a top-down change. And what's required with that machine view or machine lens of organizations, Dr. M, is IQ. So we need high levels of IQ, logic, rational thinking in order to operate in a machine process-driven world. Then the next emergent movement was around EQ, or the social network. So that was really about emotional intelligence and the interpersonal realms, understanding your own emotions, understanding the emotions of people around you. Now, both of those are necessary but not sufficient for the complexity we face today, which is why we need to reframe how we see organizations to more like ecosystems. And this is where the hive analogy comes in. So complex adaptive ecosystems are where you need group intelligence, the ability to understand and navigate groups or ecosystems in order to help them to perform, to change, to grow, to adapt. And the change type model then really sort of expands on that by saying if you're dealing just with non-living individual parts, then yes, you can use IQ. You can use IQ if you're even dealing with technical systems or machines. That logic, that rational thinking serves you well. If you're dealing with people, obviously you can use EQ to understand individuals, to operate very well on an interpersonal level. But then often we find ourselves in a sea of complexity and we are drowning because we are dealing with complex ecosystems with the tools on the left-hand side and on the bottom right. We are dealing with these complex ecosystems with IQ and EQ, and essentially we are in over our heads. We are drowning. So for that type of complexity in complex human ecosystems, we need GQ, or group intelligence. And this is really what the hive mind at work is about, emerging a theory of group intelligence.
Let me paraphrase what you said so that just to check whether my understanding is correct. IQ is more to do with as you said, mechanical parts, the technical part of it, where the engineers apply their technical knowledge, their learnings, and improve the machining, etc. Now, when it comes to the EQ part of it, is where all this theory of motivation, intrinsic motivation, eccentric, Deci and Ryan, and all of them have given a lot of inputs on that. Now, when it comes to group, and what we are talking about is that an organization is interdependent and independent and interdependent. So what we're talking is not about individuals or one-to-one or machine to man, etc. You're talking about the entire group or a total system where the group is involved in that, and therefore both these are not independently operative. You need to have something that is more in depth to understand what is the interplay between people to people and the group per se. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yes, so it's no longer just sufficient to understand how an individual is thinking, feeling, or operating. You've got to become more systemic in your analysis in organizations, and being more systemic involves understanding role in system, role, not just at the individual level, but at the collective level, and also the relatedness between the parts. So it's not enough just to forensically go down into root cause analysis and look for singular causes. You have to see roles and relatedness between the parts, and patterns are important in that sense.
Yeah, so when we are looking at the systems part of it, is that it is an interplay of all the parts, and each part is not sufficient enough, or if you remove that part, the system will not work. But if it is not there in this system, the part does not work. I mean, I'm just generalizing it as a systems concept. And what I hear you saying is that we are extremely good in analysis part of it. We come to the root cause part of it. But when it comes to synthesis, when we have to build it up from the root cause upwards to the organization, that is where the shoe pinches, because we don't understand the group behavior. Am I right to that extent?
Yeah, well, even looking for root cause is not a systemic analysis, because when you look for root cause, you're often just going for a singular
Yeah.
failure. Whereas what I'm saying is, in a complex system, all behaviors are co-created. You must understand the unique dynamics in that group that are causing the safety issue or the quality problems or the customer service issues, rather than just going for he's the problem or she's the problem or that widget is the problem. How is that system uniquely operating? And by system, I don't mean an IT system or a
No, I
process
understand
system.
that.
I mean a set of relations with a boundary. So you're not looking at technical systems. You're not even looking in terms of relationships. Often, we get caught up in what are the relationships like. It's more in the relatedness between the parts and how the system is functioning rather than what is happening.
Yeah, so what I hear you saying that we need, because each of them are interconnected, like the systems in our body, one affects the other, and therefore it will not be appropriate to say that to go for root causes. Maybe you solve one root cause, but it creates a problem in some other part of the organization because of the interdependency or intradependency or interplay between that. So is that the right
Yeah,
interpretation?
correct. And often, if you're thinking in terms of root causes, you're often implementing technical fixes. So you're saying, this is the problem. Let's send people on training courses. Let's upskill people. Let's put in a new system, an IT system. Let's write a new process. So all of these technical fixes are like band-aid solutions often, that don't address the underlying dynamic in the organization. So what happens, as you said, is the issue keeps reappearing and you keep on having to solve the same issue. It reoccurs time and time again, unless you fix that underlying dynamic.
Here, I would like to bring in that way back, GE had brought out a concept for change accelerated program in which they brought an equation which is E is equal to Q into A. That effectiveness is equal to Q. They said quality, but to me, every organizational intervention is a human intervention. And the A is the adaptiveness. And since it is a multiplication of Q into A, I find the way you interpreted it has been very potential, because it is, if the group does not adapt any of the intervention, whether it is technical, whether it's lean, or whatever you call it, or continuous improvement, if the adaptation is not there from the group, then the effectiveness is zero or
Yes.
technical.
Yeah, so it's a bit like when I was doing the work at the ANZ Bank, and we essentially diagnosed a pattern and we had to rewire the whole organization. And after we did that, we implemented lean. And the head of lean came to see me and said, Siobhan, if you hadn't done the rewiring and all that work to adapt the organization and to essentially address some dysfunctional patterns, we wouldn't have been successful with lean. So we essentially had to rewire the bank to shift it from an order taker pattern. So head office was in role of order giver, and the branches, 700 branches were in role of order taker. So the order giver in the head office, the order givers were giving instructions to the branches, do this, do that, take the order. And the branches were feeling disempowered, disengaged, and the customer satisfaction or service levels were extremely low. Now we had to see the order taker pattern, and we had to rewire that pattern over a number of years. And that was the fundamental restructuring or redesigning of the operating model that led to the change. Now, if we had just gone in with lean, I don't think that would have been effective, because it would have been like putting a band-aid solution on top of the order taker, the order giver pattern that was happening at the bank. If that, that's just a practical example from a story from the head of lean at the bank.
Yeah. Yeah, what I hear you saying is that just optimizing one function might disrupt the other function unless you're looking at the total enterprise as a whole and optimizing the entire, as you said, rewiring or interconnectiveness, so that the enterprise benefit. It's not that the one function gets optimized doing excellently well at the cost of some other function, right?
Yeah, sometimes it's the whole function, but sometimes you can do this work just with a team, and you can figure out, how is this team functioning? What are the hidden rules of engagement in this team? How is the team operating? And where is the noise coming from? And rather than taking an interpersonal lens to that, or a technical lens, you take a systemic lens. And you might see that, the manager might be in role of controller, and the team members might be in role of controlled ones. So that is their role in the system. And the agreement between the parts might be that we are controlled and micromanaged around here. So you can still apply this group intelligence or this systemic lens to a team. It doesn't have to always be the whole enterprise. The lens can help you with a team or with an enterprise as large, as ANZ or beyond. So it depends on what the problem is and how you might diagnose that problem.
Right. Let me go to the other one because I'm just getting the feel of it and trying
Sure.
to unlearn a lot of my baggages. So bear with me as I'm unlearning it. Unlearning is more painful than learning. So here we go.
I get it. I do get that, because when I first started to think this way over 2 decades ago, it was really quite confronting. And once you start to see the world in this more systemic way, you can't unsee it. So it is quite confronting, because for most of us, we've been taught that, IQ and EQ. And we've been taught to be very process driven and linear in our approaches, or we've been taught this EQ lens about the interpersonal and the trust and the one-on-ones. And this is a different lens. It is a systemic lens, and it does tend to throw you initially, because you have to rewire your brain for this way of thinking. So I appreciate the unlearning comment.
Yeah, because I do appreciate what you're talking about. And I go further because people are getting aware of what you're talking. I'll come to that at the last slide as to why I
Sure.
feel that what you're saying has started taking root and people are talking about it. So let me just go a step further. What's happening to me? Okay, I just made it. there's the 9 laws that I don't have to tell you the 9 laws, but I just wrote it for my, as I said, I learned by making a PowerPoint presentation. So, law of patterns. I understand this. The way I understand is that certain rules to create certain sort of a behavior in the organization, that part of it is clear. But my problem is, how do people become aware that there is a pattern? Because if they're
Yes.
not aware, the pattern exists. And I
Yes.
know that there are 34 patterns that you have in the book of various chapters. But I'm not getting
Yes.
into that. That we'll get into the next time you sit with me and you give me more than 40 minutes.
Yeah.
That's the time we do talk to you about. But this I'm saying is,
Not 40 minutes.
what I'm saying here is the awareness part of it. How do we make them aware? Like, for
Yeah.
example, what I'm doing at 5:30 today is the Colleen and group is saying that I spoke to Siobhan and this is what I heard from her. Are you aware? Are we interpreting it the same way as what Siobhan wants us to understand? So
Yeah.
these, so if there is no awareness that something is wrong or there's a pattern forming, how do you become sensitive to that? What is the trigger point to be sensitive to know? Whatever pattern it is, you've got 34 types of pattern, fair enough. But how do you become aware that there is something at play?
Yes, it's an excellent question. And often when we are part of a system, like even a family system, you go to somebody's family and you see them doing something that you think that's really strange. That's very odd. But for that family, it's normal. What they're doing is perfectly normal. They're in it. They can't even see that it's an abnormal. Well, to you, it's not normal. And this happens all the time in organizations where we are caught in patterns and we have no idea that we are caught in that pattern. So when I first joined the ANZ, the executive team had implemented a restructure to try and bring about some change and improve the customer satisfaction and improve staff engagement. But the restructure had taken the organization backwards. Why? Because they hadn't seen the pattern. They hadn't addressed this order taker pattern that was actually leading to a lot of disengagement and energy and leaking from the organization and very poor customer satisfaction. So the first thing we had to do was to step back and see the pattern. Now, how do you see patterns? It's, again, you have to start to think more systemically. You have to look at not just what are individuals doing, but how is this ecosystem working? There are various techniques. One of the ones I talk about in the group is taking what you're subject to and making it object. So often we're caught by things, but we need to map the system. So we started to map, how is head office taking up its role? Oh, head office seems to be giving a lot of instructions, seems to be in the role of decision makers, seems to be handing out the rules and regulations and expecting everybody just to jump when they say jump. And what role are the branches in? The branches seem to be in the role of victim. They've just lost all energy. They seem to be undervalued. They seem to be just taking the instructions from head office. And then once you define those roles, you've got the order givers, you've got the order takers, and then what is the hidden agreement between those parts? The pattern is the hidden agreement, and as the great systems thinker Gregory Bateson once said, it is the pattern that connects. So what is that pattern that connects those two parts? It really was the agreement that we take instructions and orders from head office around here. That's the hidden agreement. You walk into the system and almost immediately you're caught by that pattern, and soon you don't even realize that you're just an order taker. So we saw the pattern. We reframed the roles of those two parts with a new operating model, and that's when change began. So that's just one of the patterns of many common patterns that organizations can get stuck in. But how do you see those patterns? Again, you have to start putting on a different pair of glasses, a more systemic lens, which I talk
Sure,
about.
my problem there, I mean, I'm just clarifying that is, we know that the system by itself does not change. It has to be changed. It has to be managed. Okay, that is the what has been said about a system. It has to be managed, and you are a part of the system. So, how do
Yes.
you see the pattern?
I'm not sure that the system has to be managed. I think sometimes that the system, once it sees the pattern with a little nudge and revealing the pattern to itself and allowing the system to reframe its roles, you can get very fast change with little noise. So once you reframe the role of head office, you say you're no longer the order giver. Your role is the enabler. You are there to enable the branches to deliver great customer service with IT, with HR services, with risk management, etc. And then you say to the branches, you have been in role of order taker, you are now in role of customer service leader. And we will give you the tools to enable you to make decisions at the local level. That reframing started a change that created, the bank that was the worst performing bank in the country went to the highest performing bank in the country within 7 years and the top bank globally on the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. So I think intervening in complex systems is one of the hallmarks of group intelligence. People with high levels of group intelligence understand complex ecosystems. They can design interventions that really make a difference, and then they can implement those interventions in a way that creates transformational change.
Yes, Siobhan, sorry for this question, but I know you were there, you were heading that culture change thing, but who gave you the power to change? I mean, where did the power come to you from? Well, is it the positional power, or somebody said something has to be done? Because being an employee in an organization, where do you derive this power to make a change? Because if the CEO is not involved.
So there's two key things for that question. The first thing I would say to that is that change can happen from anywhere in the system. So when any part of the system changes, be that an individual or a part, that will have a ripple effect. So never underestimate your power to effect change. But the second thing I would say to that question is that your role in the system gives you legitimacy in that system and the right to be there and the right to take action. So in the bank's case, I was head of transformation. I was in the transformation team. So the legitimacy to take action and to make changes came directly from the CEO and the board. That was my job, to make change happen. But irrespective of your role, you can still see your behavior having an impact and having a ripple effect. So if you're facing a dysfunctional team or a team that's suboptimal, one of the things is thinking about, how do I affect change without getting ejected from the system? Because organ rejection is very real in organizations. So unless you take up your role in a certain way during change, you can find that you are ejected from a system that doesn't want to change. So that's why it's often a very tricky endeavor to try and bring about change in organizations.
That answers the other two laws of connectedness and the roles. Now, it's rather ticklish in the organizations where should I bring it up now or should I bring it up later on? I think I'll bring it up later on. Yeah, the law of multiple perspective. Not everybody sees things the same way. I got my spelling wrong.
Okay.
That's perfectly right. And but then, how do you get the whole thing aligned? Because your finances has a big issue because of the cash flow, but production is doing well. Everything is doing well, but the CEO is not happy about it. I'm sorry to give you this example, but how do you get all of them to think in the same direction? Or how do you do that? How do you pull up the energy to so that they look or see the true north?
Yeah, part of it is working, working with the subsystems of leadership to really define and see what the problem is. And each of them sharing their multiple perspectives on that will be important. But often my work is with leadership subsystems at
Mm.
various levels. So at the most senior level, the CEO, then the executive team, then the extended leadership team, then even a more extended leadership team, and then all employees. There are leadership subsystems, and everybody is a leader in the organization, but working intentionally with those subsystems over a period of time. So it's not just we went on a workshop or a 2-day offsite, we came back with a long list of things and we were very excited, but then the energy faded. 2 weeks later, we're back to business as usual. If you're really trying to affect change, it often is a journey, to use a cliche, over an extended period of time. Change cannot be done to the organization. One of the big patterns that I observe in many organizations is that very well-intentioned teams of consultants, or teams, could even be teams within the organization, the IT team or the digital team or the engineers, they come in and they do change to the organization, and that rarely, if ever, works out well, because change has to be leader led at all levels. And often you find that these teams of consultants or these teams of experts are in the wrong role in organizations. They're in role of the change leader, when in fact they should be in role of change enablers. And yeah, that's one of the big traps that many organizations have fallen into when it comes to change. So I would say working deliberately with leadership teams over an extended period of time on the change agenda, and not letting them slip into just focusing on their business as usual role.
So this is the most ticklish part of it, is the law of embeddedness, because this is something that is not visible, but all of us know it is there. They're not willing to talk about it. And
Yes.
I mean, everybody feels it, everybody knows it. It is there in the grapevine, and but it
Yes.
is not seen anywhere. And these are
Yes.
something where, I mean, there are formal leaders, there are informal leaders, and very often the informal leaders are the people whom you don't see. They are the people who are well at the
Yes.
back, and they prompt all these things. How do you recognize what are the symptoms or trigger points that say that, okay, there is something amiss? I mean, we know there's something amiss, but how do you
Yeah.
how do you
Yes.
investigate that part of it?
Yes, this is a brilliant question, and it goes to the heart of group intelligence. And those people who are very skilled practitioners and who have high levels of group intelligence go into a system and help reveal the system to itself. So what they're doing is holding up a mirror. So they're not coming in and saying, you're doing this, you're doing that. They actually are working with the executive team to emerge the pattern. So a lot of my work is not telling people what the pattern is. It's going in and saying, oh, okay, let's get together as an executive team. What's going on with the bank? Tell me about it. Somebody would say, oh, the staff are no good. They're totally disengaged. Okay, well, why do you think that is? Oh, they just seem to be disengaged and just taking orders. Okay, so there, let's draw them. The branches are the order takers. Yeah, okay. And what else is going on? Oh, head office. Well, they're just people just say they're giving instructions all the time. So you're basically mapping the ecosystem with the senior executives and revealing in the room what is the order taker pattern. So suddenly what they were blind to in the room emerges, and it becomes clear. And they say, this is so obvious. Why didn't we see it before this, Siobhan? But they didn't
Siobhan,
see it. They were
Siobhan,
trapped. So.
again, I said I'm carrying this baggage. Siobhan, this is more or less what we do in as a clinical psychologist. Also, we paraphrase, we mirror for the individual or the group to recognize
Yeah.
by themselves what is happening. We don't add anything. We keep adding by saying we hear you saying, we hear you saying, etc., etc. So that process you're saying can be adopted for the group, right? Am I right?
Correct. Well, this whole thinking came from clinical psychotherapists initially. So that's probably why you resonate with it. So it was being used by the Milan School and then taken by a guy called Irving Borwick, who was my early teacher. And that's where the thinking emerged from. So this is the application of those principles and those ways of looking at group dynamics, but in a work or organizational context. So psychotherapists were using this systemic lens. Academics like Peter Senge were using this systemic lens. But in workplaces, we're still stuck in the machine metaphor and the interpersonal EQ metaphor. We haven't yet fully adopted in all parts this more systemic lens that, as you know from your psychology background, therapists have been using for decades.
Tell me if I'm going off trajectory, and I will come back to the orbit. What I'm trying to say is, when a one-to-one situation or a clinical psychologist situation or a therapist situation, there is a degree of trust which exists. Is that degree of trust which glues a therapist to the patient or to the counseling, is that, where do I get that in an organization? The trust.
Listen, I think they're very different contexts. So in a clinical setting, you're often delving into the psyche and some deeply personal matters. In an organizational setting, you're not doing that type of psychotherapy work. You're really diagnosing how this ecosystem is functioning. And you saw from my patterns in the hive mind at work that they are patterns like the reactive pattern, the short-term pattern, the order taker pattern, etc., the micromanagement pattern. So they're not at the same level of personal vulnerability. They are systemic organizational patterns. But having said that, if I'm doing this work, of course I have to be credible. It's not psychotherapy, but it is
Yeah.
diagnosing, it is diagnosing what is going on with the organization. When you stand at the front of a room with the leadership team and you're mapping the patterns, you better know what you're doing. And you better know where you're taking the group because it is an intervention. If you're fumbling around and you don't know the pattern before you go in, you're going to come a cropper because they're going to think it was a waste of time. So what I always say to the people I'm teaching is know before you map what the pattern is, because you're trying to reveal the system to itself. If that makes sense. And of course, your credibility is on the line.
Yep. Sure. I'm sorry. I just got hooked into this. Credibility is what I was looking for. Is including I've read all your case studies, including the case studies where there's a activity on the construction side and they wanted to order for more vehicles, etc. You went out and talked to people as to what is going wrong. Why is the customer unhappy? Now, you are talking to get information to draw a pattern from them.
Yes.
What is the credibility or the trust level that you have to establish with them so that they come out with the truth? I mean, if we don't get the inputs from the lower base, from where
Yes,
so I'm talking about that. I'm not talking, I mean, even in
yes,
one-to-one case or in a group case, the credibility that, you can be honest to Siobhan, she's not going to, you're not getting punished, you will not be. Where does that sort of
yes. Well,
yeah, how do you build that up?
what you notice with my work is it's never about blame and it's never about the individual. So that would be the first thing. The individual is not at fault. It is how the system is functioning. So people can relax a bit because this is the system that is perfectly wired to deliver this result. But the second thing is the system always reveals itself. You can go if you put on your systemic glasses, you can see what's going on. You can talk to people, they will reveal it. They don't even know that they're telling you stuff. It's just like, oh yeah, people are a bit, yeah, in the ANZ, yeah, oh, head office, yeah, they give the orders, yeah, they make the decisions around here. Yeah, they're pretty good like that. They don't even know there's anything wrong with that. That's just how the system is functioning, and this is how it's been deliberately set up to function. So people are not telling you anything that is wrong. It's been designed that way deliberately so that head office would control all the decisions and stop the branches from making decisions that might lead to very risky loans and lead to the bank being in debt, basically, which it had been in the past. So it's really just about being a detective almost, or you're out there being a researcher, gathering, just observing, walking around, going to the Gemba, figuring out, but with a different lens. You're not going there with a mechanical lens or a process lens or an interpersonal lens. You're going with a systemic lens, not to say what is happening, but how is the system functioning.
Fair enough. I mean, as I said, this is just warming up. The exercise will start in the next session. I'm just warming up with the other one
Good.
of unintended consequence, because each of them are interdependent, interconnected, etc., etc. You tinker in one area, you can get a repercussion in some other area. Is that what you meant by this?
Yeah, essentially, we often intervene in complex adaptive ecosystems and we make assumptions that this is going to be a linear mechanistic process, and often it derails, it goes off in an unexpected tangent. We get results that we didn't expect, and these are the unintended consequences. So we put in a fix, we put in a solution, and then we think, oh goodness, something's happened over there that we hadn't expected. And this is why in complexity, there are often unintended consequences. And I give examples of those in the hive mind at work. So when you're dealing with complex ecosystems, you've got to start to anticipate those and really see them and hopefully avoid them.
The last point is something which is very dear to many of us, that small changes can have a big impact, because we have been trying to say this, but people are looking for not small changes, they're looking for breakthroughs in
Mm,
organizations.
yeah.
And so this part of it, we do understand that it does affect. I'm moving a little this time so that I can keep up the time with you. So here we go. I know I have flipped it off. Is that it is not a linear. Uh, it is circular in the sense we have to look at change in more of not point to point sort of a thing. That part of it I understand. The other is look beyond is how do you explain that look beyond? Although I think I have defined that here on my
Yeah.
own, this thing is to look
Yeah.
beyond and examine how the ecosystem currently functions and what changes need to be made. Mm.
Yeah, so I would say with a look beyond that, the presenting problem is hardly ever the real problem. So often we're told this is the problem, but actually in 95% of cases, in my experience, that is not the problem. So we're fixing a presenting problem when actually there's an underlying issue. And unless we address the underlying issue, like the order taker pattern in the bank, the system will keep functioning in a very dysfunctional way. So it's like the restructure at the bank. The bank restructured, they moved the deck chairs, no change happened. In fact, the bank went backwards. The presenting problem was not the real problem. Somebody said we need to cut costs and we need to cut out the fat, and that wasn't the problem at all. The problem was this massive order taker pattern that was running the whole organization of 32,000 people. So what is the presenting problem and what is the underlying issue? What is the big pattern? What are the systemic roles? What are the ways of relating in this complex ecosystem that are causing the issues that we are seeing?
I like what you said, because all of us know that what we're seeing is not the truth, but we
Mm,
hesitate. We hesitate to
mm,
dig deeper because we don't know what skeleton comes out of the cupboard and how we're going to deal with it. So probably we just look at the
exactly.
superficial level and, okay, at this point of time we have solved it, but we know that there are enough skeleton in the cupboard. But nice of you to have put this so that people understand that they have to dig deeper. The second part of it is experiment to find out the best ways. I mean, that's
Yeah. So often in complex adaptive ecosystems, there isn't one right way. So, for example, with the ANZ, we weren't sure how are we going to bring about change in this large, complex organization with 32,000 people. So we did an experiment in one local area. And we found, we reframed the roles, we appointed a local CEO, we gave them autonomy to make all of the decisions in that local area. And we gave it 3 months and saw what happened. And customer satisfaction increased by 30%, staff engagement increased, revenue increased. So by doing that experiment, we figured out, yes, this solution is a solution that we can roll out more broadly. So experimenting in complexity is often the way forward rather than a big bang approach.
Right. I mean, you're not going to do a clean sweep of the entire organization. You're going to do it and create certain things and learn from it and dwell further
Exactly.
and horizontally move forward. Nudge the group to move in the right direction. Yeah, I mean, I saw I mean, you clearly indicated what a nudge means. Very often, I wish during my time people would nudge me, and probably I nudge people. But then, in all the excitement to see the change, the entire issue becomes this, how fast can we do it? We are very impatient at doing it. And then, and then
Mm.
we lose our own patience because nothing seems to be happening. But somewhere down, there are certain movements that is happening, which is not seen to the top management or the leadership. It is happening and things are changing, they are transforming, but it's not visible yet. So I think the nudging will help. Yeah, that's the way I look at it. Nudging helps when there is a feel. Nudging, yeah, I'm getting caught in my the same way. Uh, how does a leader know when to nudge if he doesn't get a sort of a feedback of what
Yeah,
is
that
happening?
the thing with group intelligence is that often we've been taught with an IQ lens or an EQ lens to push for change. Push for change, create the burning platform, turn up the heat. But actually, that is a myth. The more you push change, the more you force change, what happens in the system? The system pushes back. So you get this push, push. You push, I push harder. You push, I push harder. And the system starts to sabotage, often in very tricky ways. They start to sabotage the change because it's being pushed on them. So leaders with high levels of GQ understand how to nudge. And nudge is a gentle reinforcement to really encourage the group to take the right path for it. So leaders with high GQ understand that, and they are very adept at nudging a group and not creating the pushback pattern.
That would come from the EQ element of the group intelligence in the leader.
Yeah, listen, I always say you need all three. You need
That's
IQ, you
it.
need
Yeah.
EQ. It's not an either or, it's always an and. GQ is additive. And the same with any of the lean methodologies. It's not replacing lean, it's adding. You know, if you
Right.
have your methodology and you bring a systemic lens to that, then you're just going to be a much more powerful transformer. So it's certainly not replacing anything, it's an added lens.
What I hear you saying, and the fourth step is strengthen the new ways and bring them to life every day. This is more of scaffolding it to see that it does not come down. Some sort of a support system or a scaffolding system. If I presume I got that right. Is that right? What you're
Yes,
saying?
yes, that's exactly right. So you can't just press the go button on the change or the launch button and say, okay, it's done and dusted now, and I can walk away. You've got to scaffold it, you've got to embed that change, or otherwise the system tends to revert to its old ways of operating, which are often deeply embedded. So, how do you scaffold? How do you reinforce? How do you embed over the longer term?
Would it be appropriate for me to say that the group intelligence is an enabler for any organizational intervention?
Yeah, listen, I think that's a really good way of putting it. I think if you're trying to do organizational change with just IQ or EQ, you're just drowning. Change is now a tsunami, complexity is increased, and group intelligence will enable you to navigate that much more successfully by understanding the complexity of the group, being able to design interventions that will work and implement those interventions in a way that brings about successful, sustainable change.
Would it be therefore appropriate to say that irrespective of what philosophy, paradigm, or tools and techniques, whether it's Six Sigma, Lean, TRIZ, or what have you, whatever is the organizational intervention, the core factor that you require in today's complexity is the group intelligence. Is
I
that
think
correct?
that's an excellent way of looking at it, actually. I
Mhm.
haven't thought about it in that way, but exactly. But yeah, if you have your toolkit, irrespective of what the toolkit is, if you can infuse that and bring the group intelligence into your toolkit, you're going to be much more successful. So that is, I think that is a good summary.
Why I'm saying this is that there's a last chapter in which you touch upon technology, but I'm not getting into that right now. All what I'm trying to say is that if there is this group intelligence, that becomes sort of a, it is not a competitor to any of the techniques, any of the other interventions that you have, scientific or otherwise. It is just some sort of a catalyst, some sort of a enabler, as I say it, to recognize that don't do it in isolation. IQ is not going to help you, will help you in certain areas, EQ will help you, but it has to be a judicious combination which is available in group intelligence. Is that another way of putting it?
Yes, yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And understanding that group intelligence sits at
Exist.
the, yeah, and it exists at the collective level. So a group can have group intelligence, but it can also sit at the individual level. So a leader or a change agent or a consultant in lean or continuous improvement can have group intelligence. They can understand groups. They can go into organizations and say, right, I've been given a set of instructions here, but something else is going on. How do I really add value? Do I just stick to my set of instructions and implement my process, or do I to take up a much more systemic role to help these leaders truly understand what is going on, where is the noise emerging from, and how they can truly rewire this organization for a much more successful outcome rather than a band-aid solution, which I get paid for, but actually everybody goes, well, that didn't last, or that was a waste of time, or, we've seen that so many times. And this is why all of these fads over multiple decades have failed, because they haven't adopted a GQ lens. They've just gone in with technical fixes when they're facing complex adaptive challenges.
Siobhan, how many minutes do I have? How many minutes do I have? Have I crossed my 40 minutes? Or have I crossed my hour?
We'll
Not yet.
have to have a second conversation.
No, I got one
Dr. Ed.
slide. I got one slide. Will you give me that 2 minutes?
2 minutes, 2 minutes. Let's
Here we
go.
go. That is 120 seconds. Here we go. This is something that I wanted you to recognize, and this I got it today morning. To be very frank, I worked the whole night. I have not
Wow.
slept. It's
Wow.
because no, I'll tell you why. It's because I was getting totally confused, and I wanted you see to understand it. And then I was quite lucky that, and that's what I wanted to bring it to your notice, that awareness of hive mind, that the group intelligence among continuous improvement professional does exist now. I'll tell you why. Now, this is a French gentleman, very well recognized. He's the author of 5 Times. And this is the LinkedIn post he put today morning. And I was just lucky to see it. I said, I'm going to meet Siobhan today, and let me tell you what he has said. He said, lean is not a process flow. Again, he repeats, I know, he's a French guy, and my daughter-in-law is a French girl in Paris. So I asked her, how do you pronounce this word? She said, Macabelle. I said, okay, that's Macabelle. She's a French girl. So it's my son married to a French girl. So the Macabelle, so it's Macabelle. Now I'm recording it. I'll blame her. Our friend Stephanie, why did you pronounce it right? So this is his take on it, and he is a very recognized person in our community. He said lean is learning and teaching Toyota production system in order, and then he puts better understood products, etc., etc. But what caught my eye was this part of it, in which he says, all this can be read the other way around, starting with mutual trust. And this is something that I have been working on. As a matter of fact, 2025, I'm just working on this concept of mutual trust. Lean is not fixing processes so that they flow better. It is developing people so that they see waste, understand the problem, develop relationship through solving them together while they deepen their knowledge. More knowing people that get along better create human capital to better
Yeah.
understand customer, ask
Yeah.
tools,
Yeah.
machine processes, administrative processes, so that they can develop collective intelligence. Shivam, you're one.
Yes, exactly.
Continuous improvement professionals are using the term collective intelligence now.
Wow, this is brilliant. And it's, we can write about it, but many workplaces they can write this stuff, but you walk into workplaces every day where this is not happening. So what do we do when it's dysfunctional, when it's not working? That's the space I'm interested in. That you have to be able to diagnose and intervene in these environments in order to bring about change. Because in many of the organizations, this is just a pipe dream. It's not actually happening. So it's great to see that this thinking is out there. Of course, it's out there. Bringing a systemic lens to it, I think, is important. Trust is fantastic. You can't do anything without trust, but often it's more, there's another dynamic going on, which is not just we don't trust each other. There's something, because I think that again is the interpersonal lens, people thinking, oh, it's about trust. And sometimes it's not about trust. Trust breaks down when dysfunctional patterns continue.
Yeah.
Trust breaks down and relationships erode when people are in the wrong roles and dysfunctional patterns develop. So you're looking again for what is the pattern that connects, that is causing the lack of trust and the noise. So anyway, this is a bigger conversation. We could talk for
So yeah,
hours, but
I have taken my time.
um,
My whole thing was I had to introduce this concept of collective intelligence
right.
to my colleagues that it does exist and one of your seniors are using it. Now, how effective he is not my observation. What I'm saying is that the word exists and now it is for us to take
Yes,
forward
of
Siobhan's
course.
work and understand her little more deeper now that it is there in your vocabulary. That's my limited
Brilliant.
point. Because if I have
Brilliant.
to, I mean, I'm convinced about it. I know it works. But if I have to sell it, I want somebody, okay, somebody's elbow to nudge them, right?
Yeah.
I won't be able to nudge them myself. But when he says that and he says collective intelligence, I said, look, we're not, Shivan's not talking just out of the blue. I mean, here is a lean practitioner with 5 Shingo awards, etc. He's using it. I'm not getting into whether it's effectively he's using it or not, but he understands. And why don't we understand the same thing and look at all what she's saying? So, Shimon, my request is the next sitting that we have, we're going to
Yes.
integrate this along with the continuous improvement paradigms, etc. In that sitting, I have requested Colleen to join me whenever it's available.
Fantastic. Look
So,
forward to that.
pardon me?
I'm looking forward to that, Dr. M.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, he says that, but it most probably the lead is about people development. Okay, fine. So I'm going to stop sharing, and now I'll have to find out which color Claudia likes because I have to get the next appointment from Claudia. I'm sorry,
Oh, fantastic.
I better stop